Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome to the show, everybody. I'm so glad you're here. We've got a great show for you today. Brachelle is here, and she actually has Wi-Fi finally, so we're excited about that. And we've got a great guest, and I would love for you to introduce Larry to our audience.
I would love to do that. We have Larry Onan with us here today. He has a website, if you want to go to it, which is his name, larryonan.com. He has a book written called The Intentional Living and Giving, and I can't wait to talk about that. So thank you for being here, Larry. And how are you today?
Well, it's a privilege to join you all, and I'm doing fine. It's been warm in Southern California.
That's great. Well, it's I'm in Seattle, and in my little room, it's 90 degrees here, which is nice and cool for me. Anyway. So Larry, it's a pleasure to have you on the show, and we're going to talk about something that I know has been near and dear to your heart for going on since you were like 5, going on like 40 years.
Yeah, a long time, man. That's a long time. Thanks for the compliment there, Kenneth. I'm 81, but I feel like I'm about 40, so that's pretty good news.
Well, that's always handy right there. I'm 67 and I feel like I'm 81, and anyway. So, but that's besides the point. Now, you have been in the business of fundraising, but that's not what you call it these days. You call it something completely different. So we need to delve into that and stuff. So you've been doing this for a long time in the Christian world, and tell us a little bit about what you're doing now and the book that you've written and why it's so important.
Well, I spent over 35 years consulting Christian nonprofit leadership and boards and how to do major donor fund development. Major donor is what many people call it. I don't like the word donor. Donor is a person that gets stuck in the arm with a needle. You give blood and you're getting a sugar cube in exchange, and it's an extraction. And I just am not really happy with that kind of a comment that we're extracting money from people that don't want to give it. So I did a lot of my helping nonprofits in that arena, but I spent 20 years in a major international nonprofit and actually developed some of the concepts that they work off of today. So I've had over 55 years of experience working with people and boards and issues and conflict and crisis and money. So those are the things that I deal with. Retiring now and just spending time with grandparents or grandkids and things of that nature.
Well, if you're spending time with... I was going to say, and by the way, Larry, is your microphone moving back and forth a little bit? Because there's some background noise I want to make sure we eliminate so that...
No, I don't think it is. I'll be really careful what we do here.
Okay, great. And but if you're, I was going to say, if you're with your grandparents, boy, you got a long life to live.
No, they're all gone now. Every one of those people are gone. So, yeah, but no, I started off, people think that when they go into a business or go into a career, it's a life experience. They aim for the north and they go there. But in my experience, that was nowhere near what happened to me. I started off with a great interest in theater arts. I would be either in Hollywood or New York. I loved the directing. I loved the execution of the theater on the stage. And a junior in my University of Colorado days, I really came to grips with the reality that everybody was acting all the time on and off the stage. And I just started realizing that life was very shallow and I wanted more meaning to life and purpose of that. And I found a couple of engineers that were really living a fulfilled life. They were very faith driven, had a very strong commitment to their personal Christian faith. And that really attracted me. And that brought me into a totally different world. And I thought I would just go into this full-time work of working with students on college campuses for years. And I did that for a year or two. And then I discovered there was some leadership strengths in my life, and I started utilizing those, and that has taken me down through a career of many, many years, doing something that I never thought I would do. And during that time, probably 4 to 5 times, I had major changes in career. So it wasn't that you always think you're going to go for something and end up there. Sometimes there are surprises, and right turns are all to be expected because life is full of curves and turns. And so I've lived through those experiences. Some of them were pleasant, some of them were shock, some of them were sorrow, but that's what life was to us. So yeah, it's been a journey.
Well, Larry, and before we get into the meat of what we're going to talk about today, because of your theater art background, and I'm firmly believe, and I love your opinion on this, that if you are the mother of a teenager or even a preteen or somebody that is in your early 20s or whatever, take a drama class, take a improvisational drama class. It helps you in so many different ways as you progress through life. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Some of the best experiences, I think all the time, I spent 5 years in theater, and I've acted in everything that was there. I really gravitated toward the directing because I liked the idea of taking a book that had words on it and 6 or 8 weeks later performing it. There was an art to that particular thing, and I liked that more than I did the actual acting, although you don't get into theater without doing a lot of that. But it removes your fear. It removes your hesitation to be in front of people. It puts you into your out of your comfort zone early on when you need to be experiencing that. And I think when people shake themselves loose and let them do something they're not used to doing, they're the greatest benefactors from it because they're getting comfortable in the public. And, you know, in this life today, we got to relate to one another. And I learned a lot about relational capital in those particular days. And I've used all of I learned all those years, but I just used them in a way that the University of Colorado never thought I was going to use it. That was the bottom line. They thought they were producing one kind of a person, and I came out differently. So that's what happened.
But you came out exactly how you was supposed to.
Well, you know, I thought I did. And then I discovered it was an interesting experience, Kenneth. I was assigned a task. I was working at the University of Pennsylvania, one of the Ivy League schools. And we had an opportunity to bring a music group into the university, and we had them for 5 weeks. And I was told in very simple terms, Larry, figure out how we can keep them busy for 5 weeks in the Northeast. That was the only assignment I had, and that was about the end of the direction. And I had to figure out what I was going to do with this group for the 5-week run. And I literally booked them 30 concerts in a row, never thinking they ever had to have a break. It was costing us a little bit of money to have them, and I was going to get my money out of them. So we did all the Ivy Leagues. We did state colleges and the universities back there, private schools and everything. And I just about killed the group because they were traveling every day and performing every night. And that's what got me into the music industry for 5 years of my life, because I was putting groups together and taking a concept or a need of a particular kind of group, whether it be classical or rock or, you know, contemporary, and we would put groups together for different audiences. And for 5 years, I produced albums, and I was involved in every step of the way of turning the concept into a reality. And then I had an abrupt change in that because I thought I could do that forever, and I was told basically I was getting a job change without any notice. And so I found myself saying, what in the world is Larry supposed to do? What's his purpose in all of this? And that brought me into what we would call in the industry fundraising. Now, Kenneth, I don't like the word fundraising at all, because fundraising is an exchange. If you think about it, if you're watching television today, you're going to see an ad on there for, say, animal shelters. And they're going to tell you how badly they need the money. They're going to make you feel bad about the animals. And then they're going to offer you a T-shirt in exchange for your money. So you may feel you want to give money, but the T-shirt is the exchange. Or you may be offered an opportunity to go play golf this next weekend for a charity. And you're not really playing for the mission. You're playing for the opportunity to play golf with new guys and new people and new experiences. So many people that play golf in golf tournaments have no idea who they're playing for because they do 2 or 3 of those a month. And they just don't know what charity they're playing with one month because they're obligated to friends to do what they did and so forth. I'm not a fundraiser. There's nothing wrong in it. It's not a sinful act, but it's a difficult act because you're always trying to figure out what the exchange would be. And I've even noticed in the political environment today, they are using intimidation now to get me to act. So they want my money. And if I don't respond, I'll get an email that says, Larry, you are not following through with your commitments to what we believe in. And where's your money? I mean, it's almost abrupt and it just turns me off. But that is what it goes on in exchanges, is trying to get me to do something that I don't want to do. Manipulation, maybe another word for it. And but I was good. I was getting good at that. I was seeing some good results of doing fundraising until I realized there was another idea, and that was the fund development idea. And that is the idea of not having donors, but having financial partners. Donors give blood and they watch from a long distance. Partners join hands. They do this together. They link their hands together and they're equals with the one that's got the charity and their own heart's desire, what they want to see happen. And I believe that when people are partners, they are equally involved. So, you know, it's a walking together to see something happen rather than I trying to convince you to give me money so I can go do something else and maybe once a quarter tell you something good might be happening. Or usually it's I need more money. It's the pattern. And I worked with people. My whole focus was what you would call major partners. That would be helping people give significant dollars, and you work with them relationally, and you want them to own it as much as you do. And I was very blessed over the years to work in that arena and help boards and nonprofit organizations and leaders in those organizations understand how they can build partnerships with their constituency and not just see them as donors where you're extracting and manipulating to get what you need. So I have that was my history. That's my story in a nutshell, kind of a nutshell.
Well, and you've gone and Rochelle, go ahead and chime in here. But you've gone and you've done and you followed your heart and you've done everything throughout your life. And it's all of the experiences, like all of us, all the experiences that you have are designed to give you the experiences that you need to achieve what it is that you're going to do next. Because you're at the tender age of, I'm not going to say it again, but you've been doing this but you continue to say, what's next? And what am I going to do next? Rochelle, go ahead.
Yeah, it just makes me think about how many versions of you got to experience and how much you allowed yourself to continue to change and continue to learn. And I wonder, out of all those things that you did, all these careers and all these timelines that you went down, are you in your favorite moment of what you've learned and what you've been through, or was there something else that you really, really enjoyed while you had the time to do it?
Well, I think what you're addressing is that people think sometimes the experience is what they're driving for. I'm not driving for an experience. I'm driving for a purpose of being. Right. And that can change. You can change your jobs over and over again. And sometimes they're radical. Sometimes, you can get fired from a job. The unfortunate part of many people, though, is they don't know why they're here in the first place. There's a spiritual component that we were not here by mistake. And I'm really I got a biblical conviction behind me, but that came as a result of even hard knocks in my own life. And it was not something, although I grew up in an environment where I could have got that, I saw that as a bunch of do's and don'ts. And then I started realizing that my purpose does not depend on what my job is today. My purpose is much bigger than that. The book I wrote, Intentional Living and Giving, is all about people understanding what lifestyle stewardship is. And stewardship does not mean money. The word itself means one assigned to take care of. So a steward was one who was assigned by the owner to take care of things, manage money, manage estates, manage people. So when you realize that you are a steward and you were entrusted to use that stewardship, and I didn't know this for a long time. I grew up in a context of a church. My father was a church planter. I was Western Colorado post World War II. It was a nice place to live. But I always thought stewardship was when preachers preached on money and tried to get people that didn't want to give it. And then they had this old biblical term called the tithe, and they were pressing people to be faithful tithers. And their goal was to get people up to 10%, they thought. Well, if you go into the Old Testament tithe was 28%. It wasn't 10. It was given every year. In the third year, they had to give a third tithe. And so when you average it out, you had to give a tithe. And that was like the Internal Revenue Service of the United States. It was the theocracy funding itself. And they were obligated to do it. And then if you read the Old Testament, it says they gave their tithes, which was 28%, and offerings, free will. So what we've confused today is we think our free will giving is like giving the tithe. Well, it's not that at all. But I don't get all hung up on that kind of stuff. But what I did find out is that my life was a steward responsibility. And I had to be intentional in living my life and giving my life away.
Well, we need to take a break just real quickly, Larry.
Yeah.
I want you to be able to kind of tell that story and give a background on what exactly that means to you, because it can mean so many things to so many people. So I want you to give your full perspective on that and have that time. Kevin, would you like to take us to break?
I'd love to. And we'll be right back with Larry Onan and Rochelle. And go to LarryOnan.com. You can find out all about him and his book that he's written. It really is quite a journey that he's been on. And we're going to be right back right after this.
You became a real estate agent for freedom, success, and real momentum. So why are you still stuck waiting for closings to save you? I'm Ophir Adar, founder of Real Momentum, and I help agents like you become seven-figure earners. My first client that I coached, brand new agent, made $250,000 back in 2006. What's the secret? You feed your white wolf. That's the part of you that's bold and unstoppable and a closer and able to build rapport quickly. So click Get Listings at Real Momentum and let's unleash your real estate potential.
And welcome back to Positive Talk. I was holding my thumb up there because I wanted to make sure the music was playing, and Rochelle so kindly told me that it was. Larry Onan is with us. And Larry, you were in the middle of a story. I'm so sorry, but continue, please.
Well, we've got to get those good helpers in here involved. Get that steward helping pay some bills.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're right. Yeah.
No, what had happened in my experience there is I discovered a steward was actually the manager, as we were talking. And the manager takes care of somebody else's affairs. And when I started to realize that, and I was assigned a task to figure this out in one of the major nonprofits I was working with, we had some people come into the nonprofit. They were talking about raising money. And I've been successful enough in doing that it was starting to at least get some people's attention, but I was still the low man on the totem pole. I was over here in the corner raising money, and they couldn't figure out what I was doing. But I was invited into a meeting, and they had consultants there that had done a deep study in the organization, and they had proposed raising $1 billion in income. And the consultants said to them, that is possible if you teach the broader body of believers what lifestyle stewardship is. If you don't teach that, you're going to be competitive to the market, and they're not going to like you out there because you're taking their money. But if you teach generosity, you're going to open up thousands of more acres of generous people. Well, the organization was not ready to take on a new task, and there was quite a bit of batter back and forth. And somebody said in the middle of all this discussion, let's just assign that off to Larry and see if he can figure out what we would mean by lifestyle stewardship. And I wrote down on a piece of paper, what is lifestyle stewardship? Figure it out. That was a yellow pad of paper. That was my heading. And at the bottom of that page, I wrote words that had been given to me by a mentor many times over. Larry, you've got the freedom to fail. And so I knew as I looked at that, whatever I did was going to be better than what I had done. And nobody ever asked me how I was coming on it. They never followed through to see what my assignment was. But I got a group of guys together that were working under me. And I said, we got to figure this out. It might make a big difference. And it was a transformational difference as a result of us working for a few weeks to define in a biblical sense what was meant by lifestyle stewardship. And that was a life changer. A life change for us personally, as individuals, as couples. And it changed everything we started doing in the organization at that time, because now we were bringing partners into the picture. We were not bringing donors into the picture. And we were talking to stewards that were managing resources that God had given to them. We had a very acute sense that God was the one that supplied everything. King David talked about this in the Old Testament in one of his prayers, that everything in heaven and earth is his, and we're just the ones that have the responsibility of managing it. So we took that all seriously. And that made a radical difference in what we did for the next 10 or 15 years. We just were on a track of doing it very differently. And even to this day, it's impacted many organizations because they're realizing that it's a privilege to have people partnering. It's a pain to have people being manipulated to do what they don't want to do. So, I got into it, and then it started changing my life. So this morning I get up, I live in a house in Southern California, but it's not my house. The California does tax me for it, and I pay property tax, but it's not my house. I'm entrusted to this house for as long as I live to take care of it, but it belongs to my Father in heaven. It's not my car. It belongs to him. It's not the clothes hanging in my closet. Everything in my mindset is not mine. I'm just managing it. And if I make any resources, I'm managing resources that I can give to help other people. Because the whole design is that God gives to people and then people give to people. And it's a very healthy intermix of people doing things because they're helping advance purpose and mission in life, and they're helping bring clarity to a mess and confusion that's out there. So yeah, I've been that's a little bit of the story there. I've been very blessed to see it work over and over again. And it's.
Well, I have to ask you,
go ahead.
Larry, when it comes to clarity, there was something specific you mentioned, and I absolutely loved it. You talk about the biblical stuff and God and all those things, but you also mentioned spirituality, and I think that is so important because a lot of times we lose contact with the spiritual side of what we call God. And I don't know if you believe that, but God is everything, right? It is everything around us. It is everything that is created. It is all of us connected as one, whatever form or way that you decide to praise that or live by it. It all comes down and boils down to we're all connected, and there has to be that spiritual tie to it. Do you agree with that?
Well, I agree with that. I think there's a book that was written some years ago by a guy named R.C. Sproul, and it's called The Holiness of God. I think in our minds, we do not understand what holiness is and the magnitude of what God is. So
Right.
we see him as another pawn in our game board, and he's a powerful pawn. He's kind of like the chess king, but really he's not that at all. He's encompassing everything. And when you realize that he created man in the first place to be reflections of himself, he was a giver and he gave creation life. So when we realize that even in the earliest days of the Old Testament, when you go to the Pentateuch, the Jewish 5 books of the law, it starts off with God having a relationship with this person called Adam and Eve. And he gave them authority and responsibility to take care of his stuff here on earth. So, even in stewarding the world, the earth, we have a responsibility. Now, I'm not an extremist in any of that, but I believe in picking up after myself. I believe in that we've got to take care of what we've got. We're responsible for that. That's why I carry a trash bag when I go hiking, so I can pick up after people. It just bothers me that we're making a mess out of things. But more so than that, God wanted to have a relationship with man, and he provided them a way to do that. So God is not some material thing off in the clouds. He's a real being a relationship. I have a relationship with Jesus Christ, a very personal one. That happened to me in college, when it became very real to me, and I started to understand that. I didn't understand stewardship then, but I did know that I could have a relationship with the Holy God. It was when I started realizing why he put me here that I'm starting to think, okay, as long as I'm breathing, I have a responsibility to be a good steward.
Yeah.
The book is called Intentional Living and Giving, and the word intentional is very important. It means we've got to get up in the morning with a plan. I will do things intentionally. I think too many people like to go to the carnival and ride in bumper cars, you know, those crazy things that go around in circles and you just hit each other. That's not life. That's a game for 5 minutes and we get jarred and our backs are thrown out of place. But life is focused on purpose. So when you know what your responsibility is and you start to implement, there's 5 principles behind lifestyle stewardship. Ironically, people think it's all about money, and it has very little to do about money. Money is one of 100 things that people can give.
And
But
I was
it's
going to mention, Larry, I was going to mention that the first 9 chapters of your book have nothing to do with money.
Yeah, in fact, there's only one chapter that does, chapter 17 or something, and I write it because I say, well, you thought you were going to get a book about money, so let's talk about that for one chapter. Literally, it's one chapter on how you deal with money as a steward. I call these people authorized wealth distributors. And so for authorized wealth distributors, one of the things that we can distribute is the resources, the finances that we have. You know, the Old Testament's got a very interesting book in the book of Deuteronomy. People were giving money and God spoke to the people of Israel and he said, look, I don't need your money. I'm giving you the Larry Onan translation. I don't need your money, but I do need to have a way for you to keep me first in all things. So yes, I want your money so you remember that I'm up here and that I'm doing things through you. I don't need it, but you need to give it. Years ago, when I was early on in my career, I had a consultant that was helping me, and he told me of a guy in London. His name was H.G. Wells, and he had a large firm in London that was a fund development type firm. And he came to the United States in his mid-80s, and this is a long time ago, so he's been probably gone for over 50 years. And my friend said, I wanted to get with H.G. Wells and find out what the most important thing he'd learned in 50 years of doing this work. And so he says, I met him in the hallway, and I said, could I ask you, could we get some time together? I could take you to lunch. I'd like to learn from you. And he said, young man, I can tell you in one sentence all I ever learned about fund development. The giver needs to give far more than any cause needs to receive a gift. Now, where's the bathroom? That was what he was going to learn. The point is that you and I are designed in such a way that we need to be giving. When we're selfish and taking, we're going to be miserable creatures. When we feel like the world owes us something, we're going to be miserable creatures. When we feel entitled that we really deserve it after all, we're going to be pretty miserable. It's when we become free and start giving that we start living. And that's really what Wells was talking about. That's what we're talking about here. When a steward is generously giving all that he has, his time, his talent, his treasure, whatever it is, he is going to be living a life of joy and fulfillment. And when he's holding on, he's going to be miserable pretty much in the execution of life. And I just don't want people to be miserable. There's no reason to be miserable.
Yeah, that's true. And we need to take a break here in a minute. Kevin, do you happen to have a question for when we come back to the break? Otherwise, I do.
Oh, well, you know what? Far be it from me to prevent you from asking a really good question. So we're going to take this quick break. Larry Onan is with us. Go to his website, larryonan.com, and get the book, which is called Intentional Living and Giving. And we will be right back after this halftime break. And there we are.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald and Rochelle. She's right there. And Larry Onan is with us. He is an author. He is a steward of the planet. And he has been doing this longer than Rochelle's been alive. Which ain't that long, to be quite frank about it. But you have a question for Larry.
Yes, so that commercial following into what I'm going into.
That was a great commercial. That was well done.
Yes. And that's what I wanted to ask about. This is something that I personally believe, and I don't expect people to understand, but I think that a part of what you would call tying in stewardship with tithing, in a sense of how people kind of take that negatively, I've taken it into my own twist, and I think to myself, I give to people that don't have on the street, and I'll give you my last dollar. I'll feed you a meal. I will give you the shirt off of my back. And that's kind of how I also think of providing a tithe, which is paying for other humans or any living thing for that matter to survive and have a healthy, long-lasting life. But also when it comes into stewardship and, serving yourself and others as you would want them to do for you. Do you kind of agree with that, or is that just insane?
Well, you're thinking right, Michelle. What happens there is I believe that people need to set a target in mind. Now,
Right.
While I told you I've got hesitations about the Old Testament tithing system,
Mhm.
my wife and I started way back when we first got married giving 10%. That wasn't our goal. That was where we started giving. I think we got to start. Got to look at this thing backwards and think. I can at least give 10% of everything that I come in for the cause of helping other people, like Covenant House that we just saw about. That's a great story there, because you're helping change and transform lives by entrusting to Covenant House your ability to let them do what they do well. Now, I'm also very prudent about saying, let's also be smart and not give to everything. Now, that would seem kind of strange. For instance, I don't give to the homeless guy on the top of an off-ramp on a freeway. Now, I know he's got a need out there. I also know there's a con job going on because he was brought from 12 miles away, delivered to the off-ramp. He gets 2 hours there, and then he gives 30% of what he collects to the person that dropped him off. In many, many cases, that's the way they get there. Not always, and I'm not saying 100% it's that way, but even in the book, I go through a process. I'm teaching individuals how to be effective in their stewardship. And as an authorized wealth distributor, you need to vet who you're giving to, because there's a lot of ripoffs out there, and you need to be smart enough in your stewardship to do your own vetting so you can give wisely where it will get multiplied rather than being taken by a con job.
Would you say it's fair to tie that in with protecting what you value? Would you say it's fair to tie that in with, protecting what you value and not learning how to set boundaries for yourself so that you can provide that for others around you as well?
Yeah, it's boundaries, and it's also doing your homework.
Yeah.
Both. And it's
not leaving
about
your cup empty.
Well, it's interesting. One of the interesting stories of the whole Bible is Jesus and his disciples were in the temple in Jerusalem, and a lady came in and put in 2 pennies. And he commented to his disciples that lady gave more than everybody else that gave in the temple. Yep. It wasn't the amount, it was where her heart was. The rest of them were paying dues so they could have a good life. They were playing a game of if I give, I'm going to get. Yeah. And they knew how to play it well. But you don't give to get, to give to get. You know, there's a cycle there. But if you stop it and you start collecting as a result of your action, in other words, I'm giving to me, then you've destroyed the whole objective. God's plan for you was to be generous with what you had, give it away, and he can give you more. You know, if I had a cup of coffee in front of me and I filled it to the brim with coffee, you would think I was crazy if I kept filling your coffee and letting it run all over the floor. But God's in some ways the same way. He looks at you as a vessel. He says, I'm going to fill you to the brim. When you learn how to transfer this to meaningful to yourself, to other people, I can always give you more, but I'm not going to be wasting it on you. So in a sense, God is sometimes withholding because he sees mismanagement. Sometimes he just wants you to be trusting him. I don't believe in there's a concept in theology called word of faith, where you can almost manipulate God to do what you want God to do. And I'm a little God and he's a big God, so I'm as powerful as he is. And if I think and have my faith just right, something else is going to happen. I think there's real danger in getting down that rabbit hole, because that's all about serving me. And what we want to do is be looking, how do I serve others? And there is a finite limited of financial resources, but there is an unlimited amount of things that I can do that has nothing to do with my resources. Yesterday, I called a guy in Iowa and spent 30 minutes talking with him. I know he's lonely. I know he's been through a lot, and he's a former Marine, and he's moving to a new area, and he's living in an area that's alone. I spent 30 minutes listening to him and having conversation. I was investing capital of time in his life to encourage him. That was far more valuable than if I'd sent him $10. So money at that case doesn't do it. It is what I was doing in my life. And I got to look and say, how does God wire Larry Onan? And he's different than the way he wired the two of you. And I know what my strengths are, so I'm going to major in my strengths. And I'm going to minor in my liabilities. Now, it's ironic to say, well, then you're not touching your liabilities. I'm thinking, well, yeah, I'm not really good at mathematics, but I can manage my money correctly. You know what happens when you do something you're not good at? You don't.
You suck at it.
Exhausted. You just get tired. That's what happens to you. Okay. Exactly. So when you're doing what you love to do, what happens to you? You've got energy to go on and on and on. That's because you're using giftedness to accomplish an objective. When you're working in a weakness, what do you have? I got to go take a nap. I got to go get a drink of water. I got to go do something else. I can't do this anymore. I think God has designed us in such a way that he wants us to reflect his character, and he's a major giver. He also wants us to ask, and this is an interesting one, as another principle in there. We are afraid often to ask people for things. In prayer, we can ask, and we understand that to a degree, but that's still a hard thing to understand, how he can be listening to all these prayers at one time and not get a headache. But, you know, in asking each other, it allows us to participate in each other's life. The other day, a lady came up to me. She's about 87 years of age, and she says, I've really got a problem, Larry. I don't know where to go. And she told me briefly what the problem was. And what she was needing was some of my expertise to connect her to the right source to help solve her problem. Now, I had to make a few phone calls. I had to follow up. I had to get somebody else involved that would help her, because what we're to do is more complicated than she could probably handle. But I used my expertise, my networking, my ability, and then another contact to help this lady deal with a very serious, difficult situation that she and her family are dealing with. She wasn't needing money, but if she had not said, Larry, I have a problem, is there some way you can maybe lead me to the right answer? The fact that she initiated the request of me gave me the knowledge that she had the need, and it gave me the opportunity to fulfill her need. Now, we haven't exchanged money at all, but she tapped into a resource that I could bring to the table. What did I do? I contacted an attorney network. because this is a legal matter. What did that attorney do? I started off by saying, this is not your wheelhouse. This is not your expertise, but who in a 25-mile radius is good at doing X? And within 3 days, I had 2 different names of people that specialized in that area. Because I took the initiative to help her, but I would never have known about her unless she came up to me and said, could you help me in some ways? I'm really overwhelmed by what I'm dealing with. That's asking. God wants us to ask him. He wants us to ask one another. And when we ask, we are blessed and we're fulfilled because people do step up and do it. A few weeks ago, I spoke at a men's prayer breakfast. And I watched at the end of the prayer breakfast, there were probably 30 or 40 people there. And at the end of it, thank you for coming. We'll see you in a month, blah, blah, blah. Everybody left but 2 guys. They were the 2 guys assigned to clean up the mess. And I thought, what an opportunity they missed by not saying, before you leave, could you bust your table and help us get this ready for the next event that needs to be in this room? Probably 75% of the men in that room would have stayed and helped do that for 5 or 6 minutes. But because there was no ask, there was no response. So God wants us to be askers. He also wants us to watch the law of the harvest. You know, it takes a while to produce a harvest. You know, up in the state of Washington, there's apples on the eastern part of the state. Those apples takes a whole year to get there. They don't produce apples every single month. It's a process to where the apples are ready, but the farmer that's taking care of those apples is taking care of the entire harvest. He's planting, he's watering, he's nurturing, he's pruning at the right time. He's doing things to keep those trees in abundance. But it takes a while before that harvest is ready to come in. So we've got to look at the harvest and realize that what we're doing is not instant. And in our culture today, especially for the 20-somethings, they think 5 minutes in line at McDonald's is too long. In fact, they're not going to go back to McDonald's because it took them 7 minutes this time, not 5 minutes. And they will make a decision not on the quality of the food, but how fast they could get through the drive-through. That's upside down and backwards. That's not the way life is. The law of the harvest says it takes a while to produce what we need to. I've got a 10-year-old grandson and I've got a 23-year-old grandson. The 10-year-old is right exactly where he should be at 10 years of age. And so is the 23-year-old. But the 23-year-old is not a 10, and the 10 sure can't become a 23-year-old. You know, one of them is in seminary and one of them is going to go into 5th grade this week. Very different, but they're going through steps and stages in growth, and it takes a while for this harvest to come in. Probably, if you look into Scripture, the Old Testament, New Testament, it's amazing how long it took God to do something. For instance, Jesus was born as a baby, and it took him 33 years before he was crucified. In the Old Testament, he tells the children of Israel he's going to do something, and it takes him 70 years before he does it. Yeah. Because it is time, and the rightness of time brings forth the fruit and what we need there. What I'm really trying to do in this whole process in my latter days, if you want to think of it that way, is I just want as many people to find that there's joy in living every day as a steward. And it's a lifestyle strategy or a lifestyle commitment. It's intentionality on steroids, and it's fun. And you're being blessed every day from it, regardless of your circumstances. You know, I think sometimes your circumstances say, well, you don't know what I've been through. No, but, you know, I went through, my wife died 10 years ago, the glioblastoma of a brain tumor. Well, I wasn't excited about that, but I learned that as a result of her change in address, I still had work to do here. So I made a choice to live the life to the fulfillment, not wondering why I'd lost a spouse.
Well, it's funny you say that, Larry, because me and Kevin just this last week, we were talking about instant gratification. And my mom used to say that to me when I was maybe like 3 or 4 years old. I had no idea, but it instilled something in me so early on that now that I understand it, I realize that I've practiced it a lot sooner on than other people. And I now see where I can help other people where they struggle in some of that. Kevin, do you remember that conversation that we were having the other day?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it's one of those things that we all struggle with stuff, and we struggle with life, and we hope that what we are going to get eventually is to figure it all out. And sometimes we need help with that, and the divine can help us with that. Larry, I wanted to ask you before we take our break real quick, because of the number of charities that are out there, and I know that you've done due diligence and you've looked at a lot of them, and the rule of thumb, I believe, is that 65% or to 75% of the proceeds need to go to the core development of what the fund is saying that they're going to accomplish. Is that correct? And are there charities that I've known charities that were in it for themselves and not in it for the greater good of why they were there. Is that something you need to be careful of? And I hold that thought, because I got a feeling that's going to take a minute.
Let's just take a break and I'll give you the answer. Okay.
We'll be right back.
The strength of staying kind from your friends at Positive Talk Radio. Kindness is not weakness. It takes real strength to stay kind in a world that often rewards anger, ego, and control. Being kind means choosing to act from your values, not your wounds. It means showing grace even when no one's watching. But kindness doesn't mean being passive. It doesn't mean letting people take advantage of your time, your energy, or your peace. You can be kind and still say no. You have a soft heart with firm boundaries. The strongest people I know are the ones who choose compassion without losing themselves. They've been hurt. They've been tested. And still, they choose to love and lead and to lift others anyway. Kindness is not about pleasing everybody. It's about honoring who you are and how you treat others, even when it's hard. So stay kind, stay human, and stay strong. And always remember this: be kind to one another, because each other's all we've got.
And welcome back to Positive Talk. Rochelle's got a team of people over there, apparently.
A dog and a cat, so I get a little distracted when they want to be around me, so I'll just let it happen.
Yeah.
Oh, very good. So Larry,
Yeah.
and I wanted to ask you, because
Yeah.
yes, charities,
Well,
and go ahead.
This is the part, in my mind, is a good steward does his homework on where he's given the money. And I think one of the things you want to ask is undesignated hire, which is all kinds of things. I chair 4 boards, so I know how valuable it is for good money to come in to run the operation. Sometimes some organizations are really good at raising money for the orphan, but they have to operate the system for that orphan to get help. So there is importance that if money is going for administration. I really believe that if you're saying 60%, I would up the ante and say we got to get it higher than that. In fact, I get very concerned if I see a nonprofit that is using more than, that it's the 80-20 principle, basically. If they can operate all of their administration and their fund development, their marketing, whatever it is, and they can do that within a 20% window, that is pretty healthy, because it takes money to do both. It takes resources and capitalization, websites, no matter what way we're using it to raise resources, there's money involved there. But I think it also, from a fund development side, and in at least a Christian nonprofit, I'm asking if they can't do that for less than 6%, 6 cents on the dollar, because we've got to be able to be really prudent in that. And then we got to be saying, what does it take to run it? Now, I get really nervous when I see executive directors of nonprofit organizations, and I could probably list out 4 or 5 right now that are making over $250,000 a year as the executive director. That is absolutely highway robbery. I think we're pushing on feeding the system rather than helping the people. And I think that's where the steward comes in, and you start asking questions. There are fortunately some very good watchdog organizations that are really doing homework on a lot of the groups. And there are associations out there. Evangelical Accountability Association, ECFA, does a great job for those in the Christian market. But there is other watchers that are watching and looking at the numbers to help people know where their money's going. And you got to be very intelligent, and it's your responsibility as a steward to do the homework. They're not going to tell you everything. So don't be afraid. The larger the gift, the more you want to ask questions. But I don't think it's inappropriate to ask questions on the small ones as well. You know, if they say they can feed an orphan for, well, I have a little school. I chair a board in the Philippines of preschools, helping little kids. It's called Little Feet and Friends. Little Feet and Friends can put a kid through entire year, a month of school for $35. Now, that includes the administrative costs in the United States that we need to raise that resources. In actuality, in the school, I can put that kid in a uniform and give him the supplies and provide his teacher for about $28 a month. But I also need to fund the other costs that relate to the organization so that we're not putting the burden on the teachers. The teachers are certified teachers. We've got a supervisor over every school that we have going there. There's cost to make these things work, but it's the responsibility of the steward to say, I want to get under the tent and I want to smell around and I want to see what's really going on. And the more you investigate, if you're at all hesitant, pull out. If you see affirmations and good things, and if they answer your questions directly, you can go for it all the way. They can tell. The numbers are misleading sometimes, but I'd say I'd be much more comfortable as a steward to see 20% going for admin and funding, and probably that's the maximum side, and 80% always going to the cause. And sometimes some of those causes are 100% toward the cause and no administration costs. So, you know, it's I think we just got to be really smart in doing it, Kenneth. I feel like it's not, you can't just trust a name because you like the advertising personalities.
So I have a question for you, because I work with people and deal with people from the Philippines, and I am absolutely appalled and ashamed of the people that are in the United States and what they're paying people in the Philippines to do the work for them that they are doing. And I'm equally ashamed of the people in the Philippines that are taking advantage of other Filipinos because they're not paying them anything either. It is remarkable to me. So when you are working with the folks that you are working with, are you making sure, and I'm sure you are, that they're being taken care of to the best of your ability so they can actually make a living and they're not making $1.50 an hour or $3 or $4 a day?
Yeah, in our philosophy, my philosophy is a workers worthy is hire. So let's just take school teachers in the Philippines. I know they're a lot cheaper than they are in the United States, but I want to make sure that teacher also has health insurance. I want to give them the reason to stay with us long term, because health insurance is very important to their survival.
Yep.
So I'm not happy just to give them a salary and say, you know, you've got to get on your knees and pray. I want to say you're a certified teacher. You deserve what you would get if you were in the public system.
Right.
So I don't want to cheat people from what they need to live on, sustain themselves. But at the same time, when you start hearing about an executive director, any place that's getting $250,000 to run a local charity, and sometimes it comes out that that's what their salary is, I'm thinking, why is that person worth that much money when the need of the organization and what they're trying to do is so radically different than that? Now, I believe we got to also pay people to live in their culture. So if you live in Southern California, it costs more to live down here. But it becomes relative to the environment that you're in, not how much you're worth. And
Larry, you've been around for a long time, and I just wanted your opinion about tithing and about giving money to a church when the mega church pastor says, I need a private jet. And so you need to buy me a private jet so that I can go and do what I'm going to do and I don't have to deal with public transportation. Is that a suitable use of people's money when they're talking about giving it to the church and for the good? Or is that something that is okay? I don't know.
I think that there is a lot of misuse of funds out there, frankly, in that arena. I've traveled always by commercial jet. I could also find a way to get to some of the locations I go by doing a private jet for $4,000 to $5,000. There's no reason for that. I think sometimes there is justification to make a person happy and satisfied. I've heard the excuse as, well, my time is so valuable, this is the best way I can use my time. And I'm thinking, come on, you're now blowing smoke and you're talking. This is self-centeredness. If you've got to park a jet at the airport and maintain a pilot and everything else so that you can have the luxury of getting there quicker, you need to stop and rethink about what you're doing. To me, that's bad stewardship. And there's a number of people that have private jets in a ministry. Years ago, I was consulting with a national organization, and they were merging with another organization. And in the merger papers, they found that underneath all the paperwork, page 75, the merger was a $5 million jet that was coming to the nonprofit. What they were trying to do is offload it to say they sold it so that it was buried in another entity. And that stopped the merger right there, because the people in the organization said, we don't need a jet. We've never needed a jet. We are not going to be fooling people with the wrong bit of information. That's deception. In fact, one of the greatest challenges you would have as a steward is to not get caught up in deception. And one chapter is called Dissecting Deception. So you know the principles of watching for deceivers that are out to get you. And that chapter, I'm not doing a deep dive into it. There's people that are really good at the deep dive. But I'm trying to give everybody that reads the book one chapter on how to start thinking right and avoiding deception that's everywhere. If you realize that this has been around for a long time, in the New Testament, of all the books in the New Testament, every book talks about the need to deal with deception except one. So the entire New Testament, there's one book that does not deal in the subject, and that's the book of Jude. And it's 1 or 2 chapters long. Every other chapter is how do you deal with deception that was growing within the context of even the church. Be careful that you're not being taken advantage of by manipulation and being told something that makes somebody else rich and you poor.
And Larry, I got to tell you, we're going to run out of time, and I want Burchelle. I think she's probably got one other question, or she wants to. Anyway, Burchelle, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I don't have any other questions. I love that you're so open about this. It's so understanding, and understand that we're here for each other. That's really all, like Kevin says, that's all we have is each other, and we don't need to make it any harder. But just in this last few minutes, I want you to be able to share, of course, your website, your book, and anything you'd like our audience to know before.
Well, let me tell people how they can get a hold of the book. They can go to LarryOnan.com, but the only reason that you'd come there is if you wanted a signed copy, and most people don't care about a signed copy of anything. Go to Barnes & Noble, go to Amazon, go to Books A Million. I don't care where you go, to your Christian bookstore. If you don't see it on the shelf, says, I want to order XYZ. Amazon, you can get it right there. Intentional Living and Giving. This is what it looks like. It's pretty simple to see if your audience is looking up there. It's a bright blue and yellow and white. I mean, Intentional Living and Giving. It's in 2 parts. First part's the principles of what lifestyle stewardship is. And the second part is how do you live that life? And I call that person living the life an authorized wealth distributor. So you can get a hold of the book. Now, anybody that wants to get into it right now, if they're saying, I want to find out what this guy's after, just go to my website. On the very front of the website, you can download a complete copy right now of the entire book for a digital download. I want the content out there, but I want you to get copies. It helps everybody. This is a guidebook for life. It's not a book in the sense of it's bound like a book, but it's a guidebook for helping you live life. And then if you want to connect with me, you can go to LarryOnan.com and you can see how to leave notes. I blog there quite often. I put podcasts up there so that you can go back and see other podcasts that I've been with. And I'm trying to just help everybody become a better lifestyle steward and be intentional about waking up every morning before you get out of bed, put your feet on the carpet or on the ground, say, okay, what am I supposed to do today to impact the life of somebody else? You've got a plan for me to hear because I'm still here. And if you're still here, there's a plan for you here. If you're not here and you wake up and you discover you're in eternity, you've got the 5 gold stars and you're in. So,
yeah. Well, thank you for waking up and spending this time with us, Larry. It's been an honor. And thank you for caring the way that you do about humanity and the world and everything that we have between us, and providing it to be a better space for each other. Kevin, do you have anything else? We have to go.
I'm just going to say ditto. Thank you so much, Larry. It's great to have you here. And again, go get the book, Intentional Living and Giving. LarryOnan.com is where you go. And Larry, thank you so much for being here. It's been a fun experience. And we've had comments that say, that Larry guy is pretty cool. So that's cool.
Thanks,
well,
Larry.
be
so
blessed today and keep on giving yourself away. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got.